you can continue talking about a little bit of operational and governance risk. How do you evaluate controls, data pipelines, and the human oversight?
Sure. The transparency issue is very important. I think managers that are more transparent are going to have a competitive edge in this space. There are many very large hedge funds managing tens of billions in assets that offer two levels of transparency, take it or leave it. But they've have decades of being in business, and there's a very high sleep at night factor with these firms. But for an evolving quant in the space, or someone that's using AI as a valuable tool, the more transparent, the better. And we like to say, help me help you. You really need to articulate. We don't need to inspect the source code. We're not interested in that. We need to get an understanding of the process control, what's going on. If the models can't explain your performance and the manager can't, and we don't invest in black boxes. So I like to tell people that, I just need to understand the recipe as much to make sure that the food isn't poisoned. I don't need to know, inspect, every ingredient that's there. So managers are very reluctant, they're very hesitant, they're very protective of their IP. But really the transparency is super important, because without educating the allocator and taking them over the line, you're just not going to get anywhere.
Rich?
I think AI has accelerated disruption and innovation in the industry. And because of that, humility has become more important. So when Jackie mentioned take it or leave it, we've experienced Madoff, we've experienced a bunch of doubling game type scandals, Amaranth, areas where performance was really good, there wasn't transparency, and there was a disaster. But now these days, if you've been super successful in the past, there's a lot of hungry people embracing AI, maybe more aggressively than your team, because you have been successful in the past. And if you keep relying on what you've been doing, 30 years ago when I started my career, maybe that was okay. These days, if you're not constantly hungry for new data, new ways to amplify the human plus machine processing of that data and then apply it, if you're not constantly kind of disrupting what you're doing, you're not going to stay cutting edge. No matter how many tens of billions of what your track record is, you're very vulnerable to going from top of the league table to the bottom quickly, because hungry people will co-invent and eliminate your information advantage.
Well, on the one hand, that means you're maybe more likely to want managers that are innovating, introducing AI into their process more quickly. But then at the same time, you need that oversight and transparency into how their process for incorporating that actually works, right? So there were instances recently of large quant managers, and there's been this question of the black box side of things for a long time, before AI was as prominent a factor in processes and markets as it is today. And there's always been this question of how is the research process conducted? And we can't see exactly the source code, or no one's going to share their algorithms and their IP in fully open manner during due diligence. There is some IP there, but sharing how the process works, the rigor with which the team of researchers is overseen, how do you avoid backfitting? What's the sort of the regular process and the oversight for testing out of sample data, in sample data? And then the same goes for incorporating. So if you say a large language model is actually accelerating in so many ways and helping people leverage their work, you still need that consistency of culture to say there's oversight of how models are being created, trained, incorporated. I mean, Melissa, I would be interested in how many of the quant funds that you'd be selling data to are building their own LLMs versus hiring them or purchasing them from others or renting from another provider. And then how many of them have gone and seen the next layer of how those were trained and on what data originally, versus using the inputs from you and then building their own algorithm on top of that. So I know you mentioned one of the things that struck a chord when you mentioned the expert, sort of the academics in terms of figuring out when a product was ready for commercial prime time. That's another place where sort of finding experts has been a potential pitfall for firms that don't have the right sort of culture of compliance and governance oversight. So I think there's some real consistencies here, and I think the culture of the firms is still an important part of the process. I think goes to your governance question, Vidak.
So are firms updating the ODD framework for this? And also, let's talk about AI readiness for managers. Do you look for certain signals such as data governance, talent mix, compute infrastructure that suggests the manager is truly AI native.
I will point out that our ODD team is one of the main beneficiaries of AI as well when it comes to looking at document review and questionnaires, legal docs. It's been transformative for them and is only, or we're getting to the steep part of the curve. So I think there's a ton there, and we are rewriting the process for how we look at firms in this space.
Yeah, I'd like to say that it's not just who runs the code, it's who audits it. So, we'd like to talk to all those people in the due diligence process, because AI is, in some ways, it's just people risk in disguise. If you have a data scientist leave and the system collapses, that's a governance issue. So that's something that, we have to get comfortable with before investing.